I think I look exactly like my old friend Christy Franco right now. Only they wouldn't use the yellow teeth on her. Christy Franco's not who I am. Q-Tip. Red Lobster Girl. Snowflake original, but not the imposter. Colette's daughter, Dave's daughter, Nicholas J. Olsen's sister, Kelly Richard Olsen's sister, Alexander Jordan Kelly's sister, Kinsey's stepsister, Shaquanda's stepsister. Stop using yellow teeth on me. How jealous are you? How jealous is the thief? Because if you have the ability to make my teeth look yellow, you stole that. Because that generated itself into existence when I won it. At least that's how I feel about it. And or you're the one just doing it to me, which is bullshit. Sorry I figured out your jewelry heist most of the way. Sorry I figured out your lab car most of the way and probably won't get credit for it. Sorry that I don't ever get credit for any of the things that are mine, including the beautiful poem that I wrote about when my kid told me about him having a darkness in his heart, or the poem that I wrote about my husband in real life asking me to say pray with him, to God asking him to trade his life so that his kids and wife could be okay, and so that he could hold hands with me through death, and so that David could be a dark future king rather than a... Stop doing yellow teeth on me. It's really disgusting how jealous the people are when they are already the ones who wound up with everything and I wound up with nothing. I own $300 and you guys got my benefits permanently shut off. I don't even have a car. I couldn't even go anywhere last night because I didn't have a tire on my car. You guys just sit there and give it all away. Thanks. The night I got Margie attacked, she went there with me willingly. It's a place I had been before. It's a place that Jennifer was there separate from me with her kid. I'm not the one who turned anybody in. NCIS contacted me, not the other way around. I didn't realize Margie had even been attacked when she drove us there, and because she's the one who poured me into a pile onto my mom's front steps the next morning. But I was GHB'd and raped by, I was the 84th victim, 73 cadets and 8 senior officers, but they wrote it like 83 and 1 to grow on because I was their 84th victim. So I'm sorry that she got harmed where she had to drink some beers and be locked in the bathroom for a few hours while I was quote-unquote out being a whore. And I'm sorry for how much that ruined her or Jennifer's life. I didn't really get her attacked. I didn't realize she was attacked at all. That's why I didn't include her in the NCIS, because they contacted me and told me what was happening, and I was just like, well, whatever. I didn't want to talk to them because I was traumatized still, so. I don't know whose diamonds they were originally, but I know somebody had a major diamond heist, or at least that was for your distraction action, I guess. So you guys could steal the Save the World money from me and the miracles from me. But to what end? Because I was going to use the money to help bring us to our bodies and to step us into the new system, like it talks about in the end of the Bible, because that's something that I knew my entire life that I was supposed to get to help with. And actually, the part that I knew that I was supposed to get to help with was actually writing the book for what I called the rebuild. And so I guess it's silly of me to have held on to the belief that we were going to get to actually step into the new system when I knew from the time that I was 12 years old that we were actually going to have to just remodel the one we were already in. But through text message, we've been sending all of our... please stop giving me yellow teeth. Through text message, we've been sending all of our extra ionized energy particles just out into space for no reason at all. And we're running low on active energy particles in our world, because in our atmosphere, because a lot of people are coming up with minimal change disease, FSGS, leukemia, sickle cell disease. There's a new one called methemoglobulinemia, which is what I think is the cause of all those other diseases. And that is because due to the lack of ionization in the air, because of us having all these text messages that we just keep sending all these particles off into space. That's the quote-unquote resonance, where we're bothering the other existers, if you believe in them or not. But even if you don't believe them, we are literally taking our active energy source and we're just shooting it off into space, and now we're running out of it. And that's why the windmills don't run or the dams don't run, because we've already collected all that energy, and then through the use of cell phones and text messages, we've already shot all that energy off, all those extra particles off into space. And so now the lack of moisture and the lack of ionization in our air is actively causing people to get a disease called methemoglobulinemia, which is due to stress. There's an oxidation that happens, and the calciums, the lack of ionization in the air actually causes us to have an over ionization in our body, and the minerals in our foods and in our atmosphere, they calcify into metal ion deposits, which wind up causing damage to the natural filters in the body, the liver, the kidney, the spleens, sometimes the bone marrow if it's soft enough. That's why we reject that's why we reject the vitamin D supplements, because not only do they have zinc and copper and metal ions additional in them sometimes, just like how we reject the iron supplement, because the iron supplement is ferrous sulfate, which and the vitamin D supplement is sodium caltrate, excuse me, sodium nitrate, or no, it's sodium caltrate, and sodium is extra salt, and the salt's already crystallized and causing damage, and the caltrate is an additional calcium additive, which is why, again, we're rejecting the supplements, and that's why my kid does self-supplement on not citrical or sodium nitrate, but actual citric acid, which actual citric acid is like double moon shaped kind of. And the thing with the methemoglobulinemia is that in your DNA, the thing that controls your proteins, and your proteins carry your water, your oxygen, depending on the actual disease, the lack of ionization in the air messes up our DNA that controls our protein binding, and we need a certain amount of proteins to be bound proteins, and to get rid of to do its job, and then we need a certain amount of the proteins to be free floating calcium proteins. And we basically took, typically when those are created, those are originally created like in an O shape, like the atoms and particles and neutrons are in an O shape, and this it's from the epidurals. The epidural is causing is from an epidural in combination with an environmental toxicity, I'm not sure, or maybe an actual virus. Maybe that's why they did the coronavirus the way they did, was to intentionally, but it's because my daughter, I had her first, and I didn't have an epidural with her, and she never got sick, but I did have an epidural with my second two kids, and my second two kids and I, we all three got sick at the same time, and I think it's the same thing that my mom has. Well, I think you're going to find out that it is, that yours is just at a different stage in its progression, because I get bumps on the bottom of my feet, I get hives on my face, I have pink stinky pee, and I think those are pretty much your symptoms too, or whatever. Sickle cell may or may not be involved. I'm not sure, but the minimal change disease with mutation is definitely I think the same thing as methemoglobulinemia. In my personal opinion, I want to have them tested for it. I need to figure out how, but it takes the DNA that makes the proteins and makes the proteins go from O shaped to T shaped, and we've all heard of like the T cells. You know what I mean? And how we know those are not a good thing. Well, that's because when the atoms and neutrons, they bump up next to each other, they rub off on each other, and it actually chemically changes them, and that's how they become bound proteins or freestanding by the way they bump up to each other. And now, so then the ones that are supposed to be O-shaped are now T-shaped, so they're not clinging to the other particles or molecules correctly. So then it's not taking the extra metal ions out of our body, and then every time we get a virus, the body tries to reject all foreign antibodies, and the foreign antibodies would include then the metal deposits that are not absorbed yet, and the citric acid helps, without adding any calcium into the system or metal ions into the system, it helps to naturally grab onto those metal ions to bind with them, since we're missing the free calcium proteins that normally would. Anyway, and then I drink Mountain Dew is how I get my citric acid, which is also a bunch full of sugar, and sugar acts like a temporary protein, bringing the water in your body where it needs to go, and I like to just literally don't drink water ever. Anyway. That's me shotgunning this morning. Hey, Mom.